Hello, I'm FX Toycat, and do you think that King Bee Dogs will make the Warden easier on Bedrock than Java to balance out the Wither? This is of course in reference to the fact that just after Minecon Live, King Bee Dogs, the developer behind the Warden and the Deep Dark, confirmed that in the current build, Wardens have 500 health. Wonder if that's too little. And of course he's trolling a bit with that last bit, although who knows, they always could alter the Warden's health upwards or downwards, but that means that the Warden is the strongest mob by health on the Java edition of Minecraft because the Dragon has just 200 health points and the Wither has 300. However, if he introduces the Warden to Bedrock with that number of health, it will still only be the second strongest mob by health points because obviously the Wither has 600 on Bedrock, it's also way more powerful and has way more effects. And so what are the odds that they change the Warden on Bedrock specifically because of the Wither? I think it's actually quite unlikely. They made the Wither on Bedrock at a very different time. They were trying to kind of make a new boss from the same mob in a weird way. That's why it spawns Wither skeletons in, and it's just so much harder on Bedrock, despite the fact that that's the version that has touchscreen support, and so if you want to beat the Wither with touchscreen, it's a much harder touchscreen. You know, it's a weird enough thing, but I think it's more likely that if they are going to have a divergence, they'll make the Warden harder on Bedrock, because in many ways, Bedrock is the harder version of Minecraft, which again, strange to say given that it's on the more accessible platforms, but that's how Minecraft be. Speaking of how Minecraft be, how do you think the Warden is going to be able to not get killed easily by just building up? This is the obvious flaw of the Warden being the hardest to kill mob on the Java edition, and maybe even on Bedrock, is that unlike those other mobs, it doesn't have the ability to fly, so surely if you go super high in the sky, or you put yourself in a tiny hole, the Warden can't come and get you. And this is, you know, a lot of people call this cheesing the Warden, and so King Bee Dog says, when it comes to cheesing the Warden with, for example, pillaring a few blocks up, I've made a conscious decision to design solutions for that without making them break blocks. I think the obvious solution is always destruction, but I think we can make the Warden smarter. And then even following that up by saying the solution for this is always being designed and worked on, so we'll see what comes of it, but I don't want them to break blocks. It kind of goes against Minecraft's principles. Creepers feel different because it's a one-time explosion. The Warden would do it all the time, and yeah, I totally agree that having them break blocks is lazy. In Minecraft, the blocks you place should be, you know, kind of permanent and not broken by even natural disasters, and so I think that, you know, the simplest solution is like, okay, if you stack up 10 blocks, the Warden can jump 10 blocks, or maybe he can hover, or maybe even creepier would be if he could do the thing spiders do where they can climb up walls. That would be very, you know, spooky and suspicious. Maybe he can shrink down to get through gaps. There's all sorts of weird solutions that I'd love to see them play with for this. However, I wanted to share with you this little meme that someone shared as the Warden solution. Obviously, what he does is he goes into the chest and he grabs a ladder, or even funnier is that King Bee Dog said, yeah, the way the Warden gets you to stop pillaring up is it asks you really, really nicely to get down, and then offers you some tea and invites you over for some cake, and here is the, you know, colorized version of that one, and then, you know what, here's my favorite one though. Here's the Warden offering you cake to make sure you don't pillar up away from it. I feel like we need more of that in Minecraft. More wholesome solutions to problems that don't involve murder. Speaking of not involving murder, do you think they should continuously update the Warden's AI to deal with all the ways players come up with to kill it? And I genuinely am of the belief that no, of course they shouldn't. I think the obvious methods to cheese it probably should be patched if they're really, 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 you know, like broken. Like, you know how everyone kills the Wither under the end portal and you know, that's clearly a bug, that's a glitch, or it's unintended behavior that people are using to its extent. Of course, that's the sort of thing they should buff at some point in the future, but no, if people work out the easiest way to cheese it, you know, you make a pillar, but instead of being straight up, you make it like slanted, or, you know, whatever the solution actually ends up being, I feel like, no, of course they shouldn't patch that out. Eventually, players will work out a way to kill the Warden, but not all players. It will be a hard technique. It won't be possible on your first day, and that's the point. It's going to be a hard challenge to deal with the Wither, and even the best way to deal with it is going to be not to kill it, because you'll get no benefit from killing it that you wouldn't get from running away, which is what makes it such interesting design. Speaking of interesting design, with the sculpt blocks being formed from dead mobs, do you think the Warden could be an undead mob? And here is a very interesting question, actually. I think that although there is a lot of undead mobs in Minecraft, and so therefore Smite might work against it, I think the Warden is more of this Lovecraftian horror where it's not just, you know, like, oh yeah, it's not just an undead monster that does things. No, this Warden might represent the force of death. I mean, the fact that it can take death and turn it into blocks, it has this very weird, spooky undertone. It's designed to be Minecraft's first true, like, horror boss, right? And so as a result of that, I don't think it's undead by itself. I think it almost is this otherworldly force. Maybe in the lore even, it makes sense that it ties into all these other weird, abandoned things we found around Minecraft. Again, I'd love to see and talk about more of that as it comes out. But first of all, Abskabab says, how did your week of driving in pool go? Did you pass the driving driving test. And so yeah, last week I did 30 something hours of driving, and then I did a few more hours of driving on Monday because I had a test. How did the test go? I got sick, like, pretty bad just before the test, like hours before it. Like, I was getting worse and worse throughout the day, and then it started raining, and even though it rained so much in the UK, I had done no wet driving weather before the test literally started. So I was driving in the wet, and I was driving while I was sick, and on top of that, there was a ton of traffic work, so all the, the routes I did learn, they were all different and had loads of just messes stacked up at the same time, and I looked into it, and, like, apparently just over half people don't pass on their first time, and your odds of passing go down significantly as you get older, according to this graph, so it's actually something like a 1 in 3 chance that I was going to pass. So, realistically, yeah, I did it. It was good. I'm now officially a driver. I don't own a car, and I don't know if I intend to, but it's cool to say I can have one. Anyway, what kind of minors did you get on your driving test? So if you don't know, on the driving test, there's like a very, very serious fault where they'll end the test early because you endangered the instructor that much. There is a major fault, which if you get even one of these, they're just like, yeah, you're not a safe driver. And then you can get minor faults where it's like, yeah, you could improve. You can get up to 15 of those before they won't give you the license. And yeah, I got 14 in literally every category too. So they basically told me very politely that they don't like how I drive, but it is technically safe, and that's what matters, right? And so just remember, the next time you're on the roads, because obviously I now have to wait a year, so I have to let all of those skills that I developed, like sit there for a year before I'm allowed to rent a car, which I know the logic is meant to be that I'm meant to drive in the year, but I have to have my license for a year before most places will rent me a vehicle, and so then I'll be on the roads a year of rust on top of that, and yeah, that's just as good as your pass, and isn't that beautiful? You know what else is beautiful? If any of the other old biome votes are added in the wild update, which biome do you think is most likely? Thank you for the question, Mere Catamatic. Very fun name, by the way. The answer to this one is they used the swamp because it was the second place vote in 2019, the mountains obviously being the winner, and it was the closest second place of the 2 biome votes they did. So logically, rather than going for the third place from that same vote, because the third place is also the least popular, they go for the second place from the previous vote. And so logically, that would be the savanna biome. However, as I discussed in my previous video, I don't actually think the savanna biome is very likely. I mean, I would love to see baobab trees. I don't know how I feel about termites, honestly, but I would love to see some baobab trees, don't get me wrong, and I do think having a savanna update might be great, but realistically, the savanna biome wasn't a very popular second choice, even though I did vote for it, and so yeah, are they going to do it? I mean, how long is a piece of string? I mean, if a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, is Toycat still a road hazard to himself and others around him? Who knows the answer to that one, but let's move to the next question, which of course comes in from the Chill Otaku. When the Deep Dark City arrives, are you going to try to mine a whole ancient city without the Warden spawning? And that's a really fun idea. I do think there are lots of, like they showed in the Minecon live trailer, there are likely to be Deep Dark cities where it's impossible to mine all of the blocks without a Warden spawning, because if there's a Skulk Shrieker next to another Skulk Shrieker, if you mine one, it activates the other. If you mine the other, it activates the one. And so what I do think is going to be funny is that when the Deep Dark City comes out, and if I decide to do a mining the entire thing, which would be a great idea because it'd be the first time that I'm actively trying to avoid a threat while I mine something, but I'm gonna have to be like avoiding wardens while I do the exact same thing, and if that's not a beautiful idea, I don't know what is. That's the reason to be excited for 1.19 in my opinion. Speaking of my opinion, let's move into the next question from Will the Zombie. Do you think the wild update is going to be split in half like the Caves and Cliffs update? So this is obviously an opinion-based thing. I mean, who knows for sure besides Mojang right now. However, the wild update, in my opinion, was a fairly small update announcement when you compare it to the Never update the year before that and the Caves and Cliffs update from last year. And I think the reason is that people were so heartbroken by the split of Caves and Cliffs, and the developers didn't want to do it till the last possible moment because they really didn't want to split it, that it was kind of bad for everyone involved. I think that they would have preferred, retroactively speaking, to just announce half of the Caves and Cliffs features, deliver those in part 1. I mean, I can't imagine how sad it would have been if they'd announced Caves and Cliffs part 1 as their intended update, but you get the point. I think they would have rather announced a smaller number of features, got that done, and then done a second update. So I think the idea of the wild update is, yeah, we'll announce something. We know for a fact we can do before June of next year. It's just adding a new biome, a new, you know, like it's you know, a new mob. Admittedly, the frog does have some complex mechanics. We're gonna finish the Warden from this update, and then it's all gonna be an amazing update people are gonna enjoy, regardless of what else we add. And then if they want to make it a bigger thing, where it's not just updating 2 biomes or potentially 1 biome, it's actually going to be updating a huge number of biomes if they want it to be. I think that is the safe way that Minecraft is playing it. I actually think that's dangerous, though. Again, it's a smart reaction to this year and the negative reaction to Caves and Cliffs being delayed. But I think rather than looking at Caves and Cliffs being split in 2 and going, oh, the solution is to have smaller updates, I feel like that's the same thing as like if your girlfriend says that you take her out on 2 boring dates, and so your idea is like, aha, I'll take her somewhere violent and traumatizing, and then by comparison to being in the, you know, favela slums and, you know, being mugged, going bowling will actually seem really exciting again, won't it? Aha, my plan is so smart. I think lowering expectations is probably not the smartest way to go, but instead raising output, right? Rather than saying, the problem with saying that we can do more than we can do is that we say too much. Maybe the solution could be doing more? Again, maybe that's my controversial take. Obviously, again, there's a lot of dynamics at play as to how much Mojang outputs. It is a giant studio, though, so if those dynamics can't be fixed after a year of, you know, like this whole Caves and Cliffs year, then shouldn't they be fixed next time? And hopefully they're still doing that behind the scenes, and this is just a preventative measure. Hopefully the wild update blows us all away, but I do think for now, at least, their goal is to go towards everything they announced. And yeah, so will it be split in 2? It definitely won't, because they've already only shown off half an update, and that way if they do split it into air quotes, it already looks exactly like it does. Anyway, with that said, the last question here comes in from Starbot9. Why didn't people vote for the Copper Golem? Question mark, question mark, question mark. And it's really weird actually, because I've seen a lot of people say the Alley is going to be the next mob being added to Minecraft, and that's weird because sure, if you look at the voting totals, sure, the Alley does have more votes than the Copper Golem. It's 54.3% to 46.5.7. However, I've watched enough American elections to know that just because you get more votes, it doesn't mean you win the election. Are you all democracy noobs? Do you think that just because more people want something that that's how it happens? You're all dumb, I hate to say it. As you can clearly see right here, using my same American election knowledge, the orange one did get fewer votes, and sure, the orange one lost in some sense of the words, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to have the orange one be the winner. That's right, I'm officially declaring right now that I don't acknowledge those democratic results as legitimate, and that the orange man is the new mob being added to Minecraft. Who's excited for the Copper Golem? It's coming to Minecraft in the 1.19 update, and you can't refute that. There's no way you can change my mind. And yeah, just as a fun fact, because while looking for this buff Copper Golem to make this dumb joke, I did actually find this fan art as well. And you know what? That changes my perspective on the Copper Golem entirely. First of all, incredible how well arted this is, or whatever. Second of all, it's weird how someone looks at that and then goes, yeah, you know what? We need 2 female Copper Golems. That's what we're going for here. And they did a good job at making it. And you know what? There are talented people doing all sorts of things in the world. And just remember that the next time you feel terrible, that actually, it's not just that you're bad, it's that you're bad and everyone else is better than you. And with that said, I hope that's a good life lesson. You know, rather than leaving the lesson like, you know what, it's fine to be who you are because you're different to everyone else. You know what? No, it's not fine to be who you are. If people have issue with that, then clearly you've got to change. But no, the more serious lesson here is that people are very talented, and you know what? Have you ever considered doing dumb things? Those dumb things might be really interesting to other people. And if people are disappointed with what you put out, just remember to lower their expectations, and then they'll be happier with what you give them next time. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm sick, so I'm allowed to have bad endings to videos that don't make any sense. I do have a more serious video talking about the birch forest biome that I intend to make if I don't sound terrible later on today. And so obviously tomorrow also there'll be a stream because it's Thursday and I like to stream. And you know what, even today, let's try and get a live stream going today as well, shall we? That'll be fun, won't it? Anyway, thank you for watching this video. Hope you all enjoyed, and if you're disappointed at what you saw in this video, then good. That was my intention. I want you to expect nothing from me, so when you see a video come out and it actually is put together and doesn't have massive mistakes, you're like, wow, this is great, and then you like the video. Yeah, this is my genius ploy. I hope you enjoyed it, because I'll see you later. Goodbye.